The vanity of wealth continues. Man's toil is completely selfish and arguing with God. You're watching At the Pastor's Desk. Today we're going to be discussing chapter 6 of Ecclesiastes, and a lot of the topics that Solomon discusses here in this chapter are ones that he's already hit on before. He's already talked about how man's wealth and riches are vanity. He's already talked about how mankind is selfish and how our toil is vanity. He's hit these things before, but in this chapter he elaborates on them. He talks about them in a different way, trying to get this point across to you chapter after chapter that everything is vanity. And it doesn't matter how you look at it, however you look at wealth, whatever vantage point you have, wealth is vanity. Man's toil, it doesn't matter how you look at it or what explanation you give. When it comes down to it, man's toil without God at the center is vanity. And so he continues in this chapter to discuss those things. And so let's go ahead and dive right in. Chapter 6, verse 1. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to the one place? The more and more that I read Ecclesiastes, the more and more I see that the American dream doesn't get it. It doesn't last. You know what I'm saying? That it's described here, this man who has wealth, possessions, honor. He lacks nothing that he desires, all of which is a gift of God, notice that Solomon says. But this man desires nothing. But he still is vanity because there's no satisfaction in those things. He's always wanting more, even though he has everything that he desires. And Solomon goes to the extreme. He says, look at what he says here. He says, if a man fathers 100 children and lives many years so that the days of his life are many, that would be huge value. Life is valuable. Back in that day, the more children you had, it was seen as blessings from God, that you were more blessed than others if you had more children, specifically boys, who would carry on your legacy, who would be your heirs. And so this man, 100 children, and lives years and years, so he has many days. Long life and many children were extremely valuable, were seen as great blessings. But yet, if he has no satisfaction in those things, then they're vanity. And in fact, Solomon says that it would be better for the stillborn child than it is for this man. That the stillborn child, doesn't see anything under the sun, doesn't even get a chance to experience this life, but that is a good thing. That this child doesn't have to deal with the evils of this world. In fact, this is the way that we talk when we celebrate the Feast of the Holy Innocents in December. In the hymn, By All Your Saints in Warfare, there's a hymn stanza dedicated to the Feast of the Holy Innocents. And the hymn stanza goes like this: All praise for infant martyrs, whom your mysterious love called early from their warfare to share your home above. O Rachel, cease your weeping. They rest from earthly cares. Lord, grant us crowns as brilliant and faith as sure as theirs. I mean, it says it right there that they are called early from their warfare. That's what this life is. It's warfare. It's a battle. Good against evil, holy against the unholy, believers against the unbelievers. Not necessarily a physical battle that we are fighting, but a spiritual one where we battle against temptation day after day. And so when Solomon is saying here that it's better for the stillborn child than it is for the man who has all this wealth and possessions and long life, but doesn't find satisfaction in that it's all vanity, that the child who doesn't even experience this life out of the womb is better off, for they don't have to deal with the vanities of this life, the struggles of this life. And Solomon makes the point at the end, even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, don't they all go to the same place? Death is the end for each of them. Now, of course, he's not speaking of what comes after this life. He's speaking physical death here, that all the wealth and riches, they go away when you die. You don't have anything. You don't take anything with you when you die in this life. And it's important to note at the beginning of this text that Solomon says that not only are wealth and possessions and honor and all these things, not only are they gifts of God, but the ability to enjoy those things are gifts of God. It goes even further to say that God is the giver of all things. Not just your faith, not just your salvation, but even the ability to enjoy something comes from God. And this is given to believers and unbelievers alike, but that ability to be thankful for what you have, to be content with the things given to you, comes from God. And to recognize this shows that everything is vanity without God. Because without God, you don't even have the ability to be thankful for the things that you have. And it's all meaningless. It's all chasing after the wind. And Solomon has the authority to say all of these things about wealth and riches because he had it all. He had all the wealth you could want. He had all the wisdom that a man could desire. He ruled a whole kingdom. He was the king of Israel, the wisest man in the world. God gave him extra wealth, extra riches, all of these things. And so Solomon knows exactly what this feels like, knows exactly what it's like to have everything you could desire. And yet when he looks at that and reflects over his reign, over his life of having those things, he sees that it's vanity. That without God, if you just look for meaning in those things, there's nothing for you. There's vanity. It's a vapor in the wind. You can't grab hold of it. It's not substantial. You can't take it with you when you die. And so take it from the man who has all of these things to know that it's true, that riches indeed are vanity without God, and that the only thing that matters is the fear of God. Verse 7. All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. Here Solomon moves on to talking about man and his toil again. But this time talking about it more as an appetite, that he does all of this work, he goes through this toil, not to serve others, not to better his neighbor, but to feed his own mouth. And he does so time and time again, and yet what does Solomon say? Yet his appetite is not satisfied. It never ends. He eats, he gets what he needs for himself, but that's never enough. He always has to go beyond, keep getting more. in order to try and satisfy this appetite that will never be satisfied in this life. And this is why Solomon says next, "For what advantage has the wise man over the fool?" Before he said that it's better to be wise than a fool. But here in this chapter, he's saying, what advantage does he have over the fool? The appetite to toil for oneself, it doesn't matter if you're wise or if you're foolish. It never ends. It's never satisfied, whether you have a lot or whether you have a little. You'll never be satisfied if that is the center of everything that you live for. And so Solomon says that better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. It's better to see what you have been given and be content with what you have than to be constantly wandering and chasing after things that you could get for yourself to fill that appetite. Solomon says that this is vanity, that this is a striving after the wind, and your appetite will never be satisfied as long as you don't fear, love, and trust in God and have Him at the center of everything that you do. Even your toil and your work is vanity without God. Verse 10. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? Here Solomon ends chapter 6 with this idea that he's once again hit on before, that there's nothing new under the sun, that everything that is, everything that will be, has already been, and there's nothing that we can do to change that. But he adds a new description into this. He says, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. This is speaking about man's disputing with God, that no matter what man thinks or what he thinks should happen, you can't argue with God. He is greater, he is stronger than mankind. And this is what we see with Job. Job, with all of these things happening to him, he asked God, why are these things happening to me? What is the point? Why am I facing these evils? And God's answer to Job is simple. He says, answer me this, Job. Were you at the beginning when the world was created? Tell me. He asked Job, were you there in the creation of the world? And the answer, of course, is no, Job was not. But who was? God was. And so God tells Job, I am the creator of this world. I am God Almighty. Don't question me, but believe. And so this is what man must do with God. We can't argue with God. We can't make demands of him that he should act according to what we think is best. We certainly can come to him in prayer and pray that he hold his promises true. But we can't argue with him because he is stronger than we are. He is greater than we are. Solomon says that the more words we use, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man? It doesn't matter how elaborately you talk or the more things you say to God, you cannot argue with him. And Solomon ends with these questions asking, who knows what is good for man while he lives? Again, emphasizing the vanity of man's life and the shortness of it. And that who can tell man what will be after him? The answer, of course, is not man. Man doesn't know, but God knows. And so Solomon here is telling you, you don't know what's going to happen, but trust in God because God knows what will happen and God takes care of his people. And so that's what we must remember during these times, especially amidst this pandemic, that we don't know what's going to happen. The science community, the healthcare community, the doctors, they don't know what's going to happen, but God does. God promises to watch out for his children and ultimately bring them into everlasting life. So take comfort in these words, that God is the one who knows what will come. On Monday, we'll take a look through chapter 7 of Ecclesiastes. God bless you.